and welcome to ReBootcamp 2023. This is week one. We're going to be diving into strategic goal setting, getting your planning in order. And wow, we've got the perfect trainer for you for this episode. Let me introduce Mr. Kyle Christensen. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us. You are the founder of K7 Leadership. You're a premier leadership and business coach for MSPs, SaaS providers. You spent 15 years as a leader and operator yourself, all-around business nerd. You've led all sorts of MSPs and SaaS providers of all sizes, hitting their new levels of achievements, hitting their goals, some growing as large as 5x. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No, I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm definitely honored, and happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you too. And so, look, this is the time of year where everyone talks about resolutions, setting new goals for the year. We got ambitions. We want to get them out there in the world. But we all know what happens with resolutions, right? They fall off the cliff. I think the same can be true for business planning overall. I mean, how many times have you seen someone go through the process of writing their business plan? It goes into a cabinet somewhere, gets tucked away, it collects dust, never gets revisited again. That's not what we want to do here. We want the person watching this to actually use their time wisely. They've got stuff to do. They got fires to put out. So, Kyle, why is this an important exercise even to begin with?
Because you don't want it to be like that gym routine that you promised yourself you were going to do in January and lose 15 pounds, right?
I feel seen.
Right? But like, go look into a gym, right? January attendance is just maxed out. You can't find a treadmill. You can't find any weights, nothing, right? Just because they're all being used. And then February, it goes down a little bit more. It goes a little bit down more. And by the time you get to May or June, then it's back to, half capacity.
Yep.
And a lot of it turns into intentionality and discipline. It's funny you mentioned the business plan going into a cabinet, because the very first question, whenever I call when I'm prospecting with my potential clients, we call it an audition. And the reason I do that is not all coaching works for everybody. So we do this thing where I call it an audition, where I audition your team and you audition my team. And one of the first things I ask their team very simply is, are you working the plan? And what do you think how do you think they all reply, Jonathan?
Sure.
Yeah, it's either a sure with some bewilderment, or it's what plan? And this is, alarming. It doesn't matter if you're a $3 million MSP or a $50 million MSP. If we don't have intentionality with our goals, now we have to be mind readers. And because we're in that day-to-day, our mind reading now changes based off of look and feel, which then it turns into, well, why are we making these decisions in the first place? And then it's a moving target. And what do I mean by moving target? Right? We're all technical people, and we're all on Reddit, we're all on Facebook, we're all on LinkedIn. And there's this phenomenon that's been happening where we're obsessed with best practice. We're obsessed with someone telling us kind of how to do these things. And when I ask, right, someone will come to me, and this has been in many facets of my career of, oh, I want to do this because I read that was a good thing to do. Right? It could be a best practice from this company. It could be a financial target from that company. But it has one of two benefits or negative connotations. Right? Benefit is market analysis. What are others doing? Right? It gives you a gut check on, hey, should I be doing this, or should I be keeping up with status quo? It's also really good for competitive nature, right? Is there an MSP down the street that I need to compete with? I need to beat. I need to find a way to get my pricing down lower, or get my sustainability higher, or my efficiency better or faster. But it could also really hurt your consciousness. It can hurt your ego. It can make you feel like you're not doing things right? And that causes sentiments of burnout. I've been trying so hard, and yet I'm still this far behind the 8 ball. But it's kind of a social media phenomenon. I mean, Jonathan, you've probably seen things like, even just in a personal setting, right? You go on to Instagram and you see this guy with like 8-pack abs, and you're sitting there going, well, why don't I have that? Is that what I'm supposed to be like?
I think, yeah, I mean, social media has made us all miserable for a variety of reasons, but this is definitely one of them. And you brought up Reddit before. I mean, I see this question all the time. We see this obviously, right, with in the MSP subreddit and in other places. Hey, who wants to share their business plan with me? Everyone wants a template, right? Everyone just wants to see what worked for others. And I get it. That totally makes sense. I want to see what's working for other marketers and other community leaders. But I think you're right. There's that point of it's doesn't quite work if everyone's just trying to crib from the same plan there,
Well, and it
because
doesn't
I
make you
think
unique.
it escapes that question that you have pointed out is important to ask. Is this real? Like, it doesn't look at where do you want to go. It's like, okay, this works for someone in particular, but is it going to work for everybody? Probably not.
Well, and it keeps your eyes down, right? If you're constantly looking down, it's hard to look forward. And not only that is you start to lose the uniqueness of who you are when you're just looking for someone to give you the answer. So, right, a lot of the times when I'm working with my clients, it's all about kind of what makes you unique. Why did you start your business? And what can we do to differentiate you? Because, I mean, Jonathan, you're an expert marketing person. It's always about what you can do that stands out. Yet you go on Reddit and say, give me your business plan. You're not going to stand out, right? How do you attract your target market? There's a great book called E-Myth by Michael Gerber, where he really, to sum it up, make it real simple if you've read it, right? The whole idea is that it's a practitioner that wants to share their craft with the world, right? I was the internal IT guy. I'm great at IT, so I'm going to start an IT firm. I mean, this book was written in the 70s, so it was the accounting firm, and right, I'm just really good bookkeeper, so I'm going to start a bookkeeping firm or a law firm. But here's the thing is none of these guys know how to run businesses, right? You're just good at your craft. You're really good at what you do as a practitioner. So what ends up happening is a lot of the basics, not in a good or bad way, they get skipped, like having core values, having a mission statement, having focus on where you're going, having a 10-year plan, which then all the decisions get made now in the bubble, in the context of where you are today, not where you want to be in 10 years from now. And right, because in that chaos, right, that grassroots stage, that bootstrap stage, I need to get clients, I need to get revenue because I need to feed myself, right? I need money. That's the stage where we're at. But that doesn't scale once you hit 9, 10, 20, 30, 40 employees, because now I need to make greater strides to make growth, not just what's going to feed me today. And that's where a lot of people get stalled out, is they live in that chaos for 3, 4. I know one MSP where they were stuck at, they plateaued for 4 years on their revenue. They were making decent profit, but their revenue literally flatlined because it was one client in, one client out, one client in, one client out, because they couldn't think of the economies of scale. Now, going back to that vision thing that you said, right? And the Reddit and give me the business plan and what can I just kind of copy you? This also happens, right? You'll see the posts of how much should I charge per user?
Yep.
I did a session recently, and it's available on YouTube for anyone that wants to watch it, about deconstructing managed service profitability. And the whole idea of that is, honestly, your pricing is irrelevant. Your pricing is a construct of your expected margins and your costs. And everyone has different costs. Everyone has different expectations on margin, right? Because you may have a business objective on how to put stuff on the bottom line and free up your own cash flow. But at the same time, right, the only reason I really want to know why other people are charging is because I want to compete with it. I don't want to be the same as you. I want to find a way to either, one, offer better price for the same amount of money, right? More for the same, or I want to beat your pricing somehow and attract them because my efficiencies are so much better than the competition. And this goes for any industry, right? It's that market analysis, which means you need to know your market. And when you go onto something like Reddit or LinkedIn or whatever, you could have a MSP in Los Angeles and an MSP in Arkansas. Two different costs.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this applies to cost is the thing we see that the most. It applies to salary and how much people are being paid, all sorts of things. Not just geography, that's a big one. Vertical, all sorts of things that make that one size fits all approach doesn't quite work. I'm curious.
Well, here's another one too.
Yeah,
it hurts your ego. If you just ask the question without asking locale or any more details of what do you charge per user, and someone replies $240 a user, and you're charging 110, you're going to go, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
Why can't I charge that? There's a great read that I think everyone should read as a business owner called The Gap in the Game by Dan Sullivan. I would love to illustrate it for you, but I don't think we have enough time today. But I want you to think of a line. This line is pointing up. And in that line is the journey that you want to grow your company with, it kind of like a finish line or a goal, let's call it that. Now, if we don't put that goal and have intention on where we want to be, it takes a single Reddit post that says, here's how much I'm making or how much I am charging, to take that goal and move it here. Move it here. It goes even higher, right? It's a moving goal now because you're not putting it into cement. You're not writing it down. You're not sharing it with your team. So what ends up happening? You never feel satiated. You never feel good enough. And you know how defeating that is? If you work 3, 4, 5 years and you never hit an objective, your leadership team is going to sit there and just feel like there's a no end in sight. You don't have time to celebrate the growth that you've had. And this becomes really important, right? Because even in the trends today and age, it's the goals I always hear. I just want to sell my business. I just want to sell my MSP.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great goal, but that doesn't have to be the only goal, right? You can make fantastic profit, hire a CEO as a business owner, and eventually, right, just have a better lifestyle while still receiving an income you're looking to achieve. And that's really the things I start to put into question with my clients when we are in that process of building out plans and vision is, hey, if you're building a 1-year plan and you want me to help you build a 1-year plan, I need to look at your 5-year plan, your 7-year plan, your 10-year plan. And not just for your business, but also for yourself. Because a lot of us are sole proprietors, or right, we have a partner that might either be a minority or a half and half owner. And we need to make sure that our life plans are in line with our business plan, or we're also not going to feel fulfilled because our business is maybe weighing on our personal life.
And I think that this really lines up too with some things that I've seen where we've done some webinars with acquisition firms, and they have a list of criteria, right, that they point to as these are the things that they're looking for. On one sense, they can provide some good benchmarks, right? Like even if you're not planning on selling, you can align yourself to these numbers. You should be running a pretty well-run business. At the same time, I feel like that approach that you're pointing out to, everyone wants to sell their business. Not everyone is on the same track. And if your ultimate track it's not going to be in the same place as someone who wants to grow to, 50, 100 million, whatever it is. That's very different than what your goals may be. And so it just struck me as something that it makes a ton of sense that before you can get into you don't want to have those goals in place for your 1-year plan if they're not going to match up ultimately to your longer term things, because you could be growing in the wrong direction.
Exactly. And it's all about intentionality, right? If my 5-year plan is, let's say, rapid growth, I want to acquire 4 MSPs, I want to get to 30, 40, 70, $100 million, whatever, right? Well, now we have a question about cash flow. Because if I want to be most successful, how can I start to improve my processes, as an example, to where my bottom line net margin, net income, now supports the ability to be more competitive on the acquisition market. And on the flip side, if I know I'm at the end of my career and I do want to sell because I do have, some personal plans or whatever, right? Well, then it's the same dilemma, right? Now I need to build a 1, 2, 3-year narrative that shows we have increased efficiencies. That way, when I do go to sell, I get top multiples for my sell and my value of my organization because I am showing consistent growth and maturity, not a hockey stick where all of a sudden I went from 20% gross margin to 80% gross margin. I can tell you right now, I've helped with a lot of purchases and sales and due diligence. The second you see a hockey stick, you start to ask questions. Are the employees burned out? Are you screwing the customers? Are you, right? Like, did you go and cancel every tool you had in your cogs just to try to meet that goal because you didn't plan ahead?
Basically. Yeah.
And then what's going to happen is they're going to give you a long earnout. And you're going to have to now have a boss for 3-4 years in order to just save your sell price. You're just giving them more ammo at that point. So either way, right? I think that's kind of pointed out to Jonathan, is there's that intentionality, to using that word again, that we need to be disciplined in order to hit. And it's funny, I did a blog article at the beginning of the year about the top traits that I think an MSP owner can work on this year. And I see for a lot of us, it is discipline. I see so often we don't have the discipline to just keep the wheels moving forward and beating the drum. To the example where one of my clients, they actually call me their chief reminder officer. Because I'm that guy where when I'm facilitating their quarterly or their monthly meetings, I'm just that guy sitting there with the drum going, this is the business plan, this is the business plan, this is the business plan. And honestly, you can take all those shiny objects or those new toys that you saw at some conference and we can throw them in the trash for a minute because we need to work on some of your maturity.
Oh, but it's so fun to buy this stuff. Buying things is great.
Right? Going back to E-Myth, though, because that's us being the practitioner wanting to share our craft. But as your business scales and grows, you have to delegate your craft. Your craft, honestly, I mean, unless you're a traditional partner-based consulting firm, which most MSPs are not, if you want to sit in that CEO seat, you can't touch the toys anymore. You can't touch the client environments anymore. You need to be the owner and set an example and hold your vision accountable.
Well, let's talk about the topic of goal setting specifically. You're mentioning, okay, yeah, you having that vision, having the idea of where you ultimately want to be, and because a lot of the people watching this are going to be technical people. You mentioned in a previous conversation, reverse engineering. Okay, so now once we have that, the key is now we can start reverse engineering. We can start getting more specific and coming back down to a 5-year plan, to a 1-year plan. When you're thinking about goal setting for this year, can we talk about that a little bit and like how that actually works and what it can look like? How specific should goals look?
It's a declining scale. That declining scale is based off of how far out we're going. So if we're in that 7 to 10, 5 to 10 year range, you want it to be like 30% accurate, right? You're really taking your forecasts and going, hey, let's use an example. I'm $3 million MSP, right? I've got maybe 20 people on staff. Well, if I have aspirations in 10 years to live on my own, right, with having a hired CEO, then I probably need to understand what type of net profit or net income I need in order to hire a CEO and also pay myself. So, right, is that $10 million, $12 million, $15 million, right, with what type of net margin? And really, that's as hard as you need to make the math, right? This is like 30, 40% accuracy. Now, you mentioned the word reverse engineering. Once you can put that marker in the sand, and it doesn't always have to be, I go to my clients too, there's some other more subjective things you kind of want to talk about, look, feel, offices, locations, etc. Is once we have, right, the top of our mountain, the pinnacle of our mountain, reverse engineer it like a project manager would. Right? What is the milestone at 5 years to hit 15 million? What is the milestone at 3 years to hit 15 million? What is the milestone of 1 year to hit, right? It's literally divide by 5, divide by 3, divide by 2, divide by 1. Obviously, a CFO would make it a little bit more granular than that. But I'm just saying that when I'm doing that is 5 years is going to be probably 60% accurate. My 3-year goal is going to be like 80% accurate. And my 1-year goal is going to be like 95% accurate because it's more budget and forecast based. If we're staying financially driven. Now, also though, in that you need to involve your entire leadership team when you're coming up with these 5-year, 3-year, 1-year plans, because if you've done this right, we need to focus on a team of people that are going to help you get up that mountain. So what ends up happening is, you really need to start thinking of that roadmap and what tasks are going to have to get you done and get you up there. And right, there's obviously sprints and there's ways of objectifying some of these ideas. And once you know kind of where that top of that mountain is, it's easier then now to go, okay, so this year we need to get to 4.2 million with X% on the bottom line. You break that up, right, month over month, and that now creates your budget. That creates what growth you need to have for like quota sakes. And that also starts to add into things like churn and CAC and all that other items. And I love when I see, oh, I don't have quotas. I don't like quotas from MSP owners, but they also want growth. So, right, you kind of have to start asking yourself that question of, if I am going to be looking to grow or improve my business, is revenue important? Is profit important? And what takes us to get there? They're
Great.
not dirty words. And your leadership team should be aware of where they are, right, to measure. Right, we all know the acronym SMART: strategic, measurable, attainable, relatable, and time-based. Or relevant, excuse me, right? We need that ability to go, hey, where am I and where do I need to go? So that's where things like scorecards and KPIs start to come into place and become important, because I need to objectively know if I'm doing a good job for you as the owner.
Right. Financial numbers and planning aside, the actual activities that are going to get you there. I mean, I've seen people break these down into, rocks. You mentioned SMART goals. Let's zero in on that for a second. Anything else that's kind of a must-have quality for specific goals? I mean, common ones, you need to have an owner. A goal without an owner is not going to get hit. Anything else like that?
Needs to be written down. First and foremost, right? You need to put it somewhere, and you need to do it at the beginning of the year. You don't do it as you go, because if you don't start with a plan, then what's going to happen is whatever noise, whatever client complaint, whatever financial thing you fell into last week is all of a sudden going to be now your goal for next quarter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. You allow the noise from yesterday or that one client voice. I mean, we've all been in that scenario, right? A client makes a complaint. The owner finds out about it. We all freak out, run around, change process, reprimand an employee, give a client a discount. We do all these things. Change the process even to the point where it doesn't look the same anymore. And a month or two goes by and you end up going, why did we change this process? Right? And you go, oh, that one time out of a million, right? We knee jerked. So you need to be able to plan your quarter by quarter so that you prevent that knee jerking, right? Have that discipline to act on it. And also really be able to reflect on, I think as another exercise we can possibly do, and I make a lot of my clients do, is reflect on the things last year that consumed your time. Reflect on the things last year that completely pulled you out of working on your business. Really start to think about the things that in your personal life, your friend and your family, the comments that they may have made or the sentiment you may have felt that you want to engineer out of your business, and do it. Just set a goal marker. One of the quotes I use so often, and I'll probably end up saying it a couple times as we talk, Jonathan, is perfection is the enemy of progress.
This hits home for me too.
Yeah, it's in for all of us. Perfection is the enemy of progress. And so often we're afraid to make decisions because we do not have all the information. It's funny, going back to that blog article again, one of the other traits other than discipline I said that we need to all work on is decision making. Because we all feel like we need to have 100% of the information in order to make a decision. We're never going to have 100% of the information, or you're going to wait 6, 9, 12 months. And by the time 6, 9, 12 months rolls around, you have forgotten about it to the next shiny object.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be comfortable making decisions with that 60% of the information, 70% of that information, or just start building it and build it as you go. It's funny, like when we walk through this with my clients and we're building out business plans, the business plan really isn't perfectly flushed out for 5, 6, 7, 8 months. But as long as we get something down, and when we come into our next session, we look at it. Do we still love it? Kind of love it? Okay, what can we do to change to make it a little bit better? And then over time, it starts to become more perfect. It starts to become more adjustable. And the next thing you know, it goes 2, 3, 4 years before we touch it again.
That's a great point. And I'm imagine having that too. It's just a great way to, use the word accountable, to hold people accountable. And also just gut check, I think, is another word that you were mentioning before too. Having that continuous set of like, okay, this isn't just in our heads anymore. This is everyone. We're going to continue to have that gut check.
I mean, and that's important too. You celebrate your wins. If you say, hey, we want to get these 12 things done this year in the business, and you get 10 of them done, I can guarantee you that is more than you would have gotten done without this plan.
Awesome. Well, let's close out this session with this question. What about homework? How can someone put this into action? You had a recommendation that people spend time thinking about this. What's your suggestion there if someone's going to walk away from this, they want to do something today?
With intention, I want you to go into your calendar from 8 a.m. to noon on a working day and have D&D time. And in that D&D time, I want you to communicate to your team. I want you to communicate to your friends and family, communicate to your clients, right, that the owner is not available between 8 and noon, and that's it. And in that time, just reflect. I want you to, one of the exercises I do with a lot of my clients is I have them open up their Outlook calendar or their PSA calendar, whatever they use. And let's go month by month and let's look at the things that you maybe should have not done. Maybe someone else you should have delegated, and maybe pulled you away from something, a process that should have been developed that never got developed, and start to really make bullet points, right? Make it easy to take notes on this and go, hey, should I have done it differently? Should we have had a process for this? Should we have maybe taken some time to write some automation for that? And right, this really starts to curate a list of things that you probably need to get back to. But also, I want you to think as an owner, right? In those days, do you see those days where you had like 9 hours of stuff, 10 hours of stuff? Is there a way we could have gotten that down to 6 hours of stuff by delegating to somebody else? And through this exercise also, really start to think about the wins, the losses, the opportunities, the deal that you could have won if you only had this much better efficiency or pricing or whatever. And just start to write this stuff down. Then I have some questions that I think are really important, right? What are your core values and do you love them? There's a great article that you can all look up called Patrick Lencioni's Value Traps. And a lot of our values sometimes are a little on the nose and they don't really do anything because it's something like respect. Okay. Like respect. What does that tell me? That I'm only gonna hire employees that are respectful. Well, I'm gonna do that regardless, right? It's like if I have a technician walk into a client's office and tells the client, no, I'm not doing that because I don't like you. Well, yeah, I'm not gonna hire him anyway, right? That's a value trap because that's permission to play. That's one of his value traps. And really think about that because that is a guiding force in the culture of your business, right? We talk a lot about culture and how people love working who they love to work for. The other thing I want you to think about, and the question I want you to ask is, what is the problem your organization is addressing? And don't just say IT, because if I'm looking for an IT company, I expect you to be really good at IT, right? What problem are you addressing? Also, third question, what do you want to see more or less of in your organization? And this can be completely subjective. And I think, Jonathan, I'll put together a form so they can answer these on paper to make it easier.
Nice.
Fourth question, what would I like to see in my organization in 10 years? Close your eyes and think. If I walk into my office in 10 years, do I want floating chairs? Do I want my own office with a window? Do I want literally to go into a CEO's office and have a conversation with him on how our profit's looking, right? I want you to think about in 10 years, do you want your children working at your company? Do you want to be literally going to a board meeting because you own like 2% because you've sold most of the business and now you're just an advisor, right? Think about those things. And then the last question, if you had a magic wand and you waved it and you could change one thing in your business immediately, what would it be? And from those 5 questions and reflecting on last year, you can start to put together a little bit of an action plan for some of the things that you need to fix this year and put them into effect immediately. Whether that's tickets in your PSA, whether that's time blocked off in everyone's calendar for 3 hours a week to work on, whether that's delegating this task to one person on your leadership team, right? And I think from there, you'll start to see that with that intention and with that discipline of reviewing all of this, right? Because you're going to want to know how close am I to getting this done? You will improve your organization. And also how much money it's going to take to get it all done.
Kyle, this was great. What a perfect way to kick off this series. Video 2, day 2, and week 1 here. We're going to move into, okay, now you've been intentional about your goal setting, about your bigger vision. Let's talk about execution next. So we'll come back with that on day 2.
Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate it.